Taigi, kaip Paulina sakė prieš tai, paskutinė meetingė, kad bus kažkokie show and tell and stuff, tai man davė idėją, kad kadangi aš iš General jau išėjau, bet turėjau savo gerų experiences, quote unquote, gerų. Ir kadangi aš nemažai laiko praleidau dirbdamas su Perforce case'ais ir su Facebook'o platforma, basically wasted time, jeigu aš dabar tiesiog Android'ą darau. Tai galvojau, prieš sort of kol visko dar nepamiršau, padarysiu jums prezentaciją, kad jeigu kas nors pamatysite kur nors case filteryje keywords like Facebook or Perforce, tai nebus tokie, fuck it, whatever, šitą neimsiu. Jo, šiaip, honestly, galit ir man assignint, nes at this point, it's still, ar kai kurios cases pats reportinu, because everything is broken, nothing works, ir it's just sad. But anyway, kas iš jūsų žinot, kas yra Perforce? Nice. Kas esate darę cases su Perforce? Basically, tie, kurie prieš tai pakėlė rankas. Cool. For everybody else, Perforce yra version control, just like šitą, like Colab or whatever else, ką jūs norit naudoti. Tiesiog, it works differently dėl to, kad different negu Colabas su Perforce'u, at least bent jau su Core programą jau, you're not supposed to work on the same file. Keliese, man rodos, yra tik tai, kad kažkas išsitraukia failą, works on it, tada įkiša like į biblioteką, basically, like checkoutas, check-inas. And that's the whole point, kad nebūtų tokių dalykų kaip netyčia kažkas užsirašė, kažkas persirašė, just one person at a time. Dabar, like, at now, aš kiek žiūrėjau, jie turi daug visokių pasiūlymų, ten galima ir daugiau negu vienas žmogus dirb, žodžiu, jie ten išsiplėtė, but that's most of the time. Jeigu jūs darysit case'ą, jums užteks to core stuff ir nebent paskiau jau galėsit išsiaiškinti, kaip dirbti su kitom programom. Ką aš jums papasakosiu, tai basically, ką ir pradėjau, what is Perforce, kaip jį susidownloadint, kaip jį susisetupint, kur galima padaryti klaidų ir kaip jų nepadaryti, kaip Unity projektą pasileisti su juo ir actually, kam dar galima rašyti, jeigu kažkas negerai. O paskiau apie Facebooką, basically same stuff, tik tai dar biškai apie Facebooko developers page, game roomą ir irgi, jeigu kažkas negerai, how to fix some of the issues. Taigi, ką jau biškai papasakojau, kad Perforce'as tiesiog yra version control ir mes at some point, neatsimenu nuo kurios versijos, bet like way back jau senai yra tiesiog pluginas pas mumis, kad mes, prisimam atsakomybę už Perforce'o veikimą. That's why every time kažkas bugą submitina, we actually have to look into that. Jis dabar jau, kaip sakiau, turi jau daugiau visokių galimybių, bet aš papasakosiu tiesiog apie core stuff ir most of the time, ko jums reikės darant cases. Kai jūs atsidarot puslapį, there's only two main things, kurių jums reikia. There's a bunch of random stuff, kurie nelabai aišku iš pradžių, ką jums atsisiūs, bet jums gražiai čia labai parodžiau with, as you can see, red circles, this one and that one. Jo. Taigi, čia vienas yra serveris, kuris basically runina like, all the file control stuff, ir kitas visual client, su kuriuo jums patogiau bus tiesiog viską daryti. You don't really need it, I think, bet be jo, it's just gonna be a hassle ir tiesiog daug sunkiau, tai tiesiog viską galėsit maigyti normaliai ir klientas palengvina viską. For Windows yra labai kietas tutorialas, basically nueinat į Google, parašot, aš įdėjau tutorialo linką, bet Google'e parašot installing Perforce Windows, literally vienas iš pirmų linkų, man rodos, yra basically 5 minučių tutorialas, kaip nuo instalo ir kaip basically irgi rodo, ką parsisiųst ir kaip susinstaliuot, basically ten tiesiog next and stuff ir yes. Yeah, by the way, a lot of this information yra ir Confluence pages, ką man tik tai vėliau parodė, tai jeigu dar kažkokiu bus klausimų, kuriuo aš nebuvau atsakęs ar dar kažką, arba tiesiog nenorėsit varginti su manim, tai Confluence pages irgi yra apie Perforce, so that's something you can just look into. Bet šiaip dėl instaliavimo, tai jo, yra quick 5-minute video, it's really easy, tiesiog follow the steps ir at the end of it viską turėsit, ko jums reikia. For Macs yra biškai sunkiau, but not impossible. Tiesiog parsisiunčiat pas juos pasirinkę failą, kuris basically yra P4D čia serveris. Reikia paleisti su šitą chmod plus x komanda, apie kurią aš prieš tai nežinau, but like it's really easy, tiesiog use that command su file pathu iki to p4d ir jis sukurs executable, kurį paleidus, tada šitas process is going to be the server. Nes ant Windows'ų jis basically acts as a service, tai tipo in the background labiau, o ant Mac'o it's basically kaip ir per terminalą, I guess, tiesiog paleidai ir jis executina ir runina tą ekstra programėlę. And that's going to be the server, ant kurio basically hostins, kuris kontroliuos visą tą procesą. Yeah, that's basically for Windows and Mac. Now, kai jūs pasileisit, va čia yra what you will see, kai iš pirmą kartą maždaug, well, you're not going to see these fields, bet šitas langas bus, kai jūs įsijungite Visual Client P4V. Ir ką tai reiškia, kad jums pirmą reikia susikurti userį ir workspace, because that's how it works. Reikia jam turėti userį, kur mostly svarbu yra tik tai username ir everything else. Jis turi keletą fieldų, like you have to input an email, but niekad nereikėjo man jokios informacijos iš ten, so just basically reikės tiesiog atsiminti username. O passwordo nebūtinai, nebent kažkaip keistas reikalauja or something. Yeah, workspaces, I think it should be, workspaces basically yra how it sounds, the space you work on, ir tai turi būti būtinai folderis, kuris yra a higher directory negu jūsų šitas projektas, ant kurio dabar dirbate. So, if you want, tarkim, tu turi project folderį, whatever you set the root folder of your workspace, jis turi būti aukščiau tavo projekto. Like somewhere deeper, jis turi būti tiesiog inside. Tai gali būti iš karto, tai gali būti pats projektas tiesiog, bet kitaip Unity tiesiog neveiks. Veiks, but it's not going to connect properly. Ir mes errorus, it's not going to work. Tai taip, that's basically the only reikalavimas workspace rooto ir tiesiog atsiminti reikės workspace name, nes basically paskiau, kai connectinsitės per Unity patį, tai reikės atsiminti this info. Basically, yeah. Taigi dabar va čia yra, ką jūs galite matyti pačiam editoriui ir kai jūs nueinate į Project Settings, Editor Settings, ten galite pasirinkti Version Control ir ten bus Perforce. And at that point matysite šitą langą, which is basically pirmas yra username. Aš nukropinau the field names. Well, anyway, pirmas yra the username, kurį jūs susikūrėt, tada passwordas, workspace name ir there was a difference between host and server. So basically, if I remember correctly, tai vat apačioj host, the tuščias fieldas, like, because it's usually tie fieldai yra sumaišomi dėl to, kad like, you just have to serveryje parašyti localhost ir portas 1666. Because I'm not sure what the host is for, to be honest, bet jeigu ten įrašysit serverio visą šitą IP, because you're most of the time tiesiog dirbsit ant savo kompo, ta serveris runins pas jumis, tai that's going to be localhost, bet jeigu norėsit kada nors, jeigu keisui svarbu bus kada ant kažkano kito kompo, so basically just instead of localhost IP rašykit to kito kompo. It should work. Man asmeniškai nereikėjo to daryti niekad, bet like, jeigu ką, tai if you find out anything interesting, kaip veiks, you can just write to me, man bus įdomu išgirsti. Tada yra log level, kur yra notice right now. That's basically tiesiog kokį lygį informacijos jums suteikt. It's like difference between info, notice, verbose arba error logs, critical, I think. Basically tiesiog ant kiek spamint jūsų konsolę with random messages. Jeigu pasirinksit verbose, tai viską, ką jis ten gauna, jis Perforce'as turi savo console basically ir tiesiog pompins jums tiesiai į Unity console. But you don't always want that. Tiesiog kartais nori, kad only the important stuff rodytų. Ir tada connect. There are some errors, apie kurias paskiau bus parodysiu vėliau, but it should just show up as connected at this point. Ir nebent jūsų rootas netaip nustatytas, tada konsolė spamins with like incorrect root, but everything is gan paaiškinama, tai by now you should understand, kai perskaitysit tą errorą. Paskiau, once you connect with Perforce, how do you do actions? Like how do you actually submit anything? How do you check in or check out files and stuff? Once you create something, kai prisikonektinti per Force'ą, all the files in your, kaip ir Collabą, pavyzdžiui, just šalia failų visokie ikonai rodo basically statusą šitų failų, and there's a neat little legend šitam editor settinguose, kur paaiškinam basically, ką koks šitas ženkliukas reiškia. So, pačiai pradžiai, tarkim, bus skrituliukai, that means they're saved on your local šitam projekte, but they're not actually in the server database, well, it's in the depot, depot vadinasi. Bet jo, tada, basically at that point you can just naudot šitą submenu of version control, ten yra visi šitie per Force'o, ką galima naudot, like adding it, submitting, resolve conflicts, jeigu kažkas nutinka, and stuff like that. So yeah, so basically you just create some files. Most of the time, kai jie yra naujai sukurti, they're going to be automatically added for mark to add, just submitting juos. Basically what that means, šitie failai, kurie yra marked for add, ir kai juos submitini, they become read-only. Like, kad jų nebūtų galima editint, they basically yra užmarkinami like that, ir that means, tarkim, it's a very important thing, nes prieš tai buvo bugas, kur žmogus sakė, kad if you do some shenanigans, tada šitas, the file, vienas iš failų būna tada not read-only, ir man devas sakė, it's just a big no-no. Like, per Force'as, he has to do one job correctly, tipo, and that's like, užtikrint, kad nieks nesupisa šitų failų, and if it can't do that, tai tada it's a really bad problem. Tai vat, jeigu viskas normaliai veikia, šitie, all these files, kurie yra submitinti, basically, kaip sakiau, into the library, like a book, into the database, yeah, they're not supposed to be touched. Like, jeigu tu nori kažkokį padaryti pakeitimą, you check them out, tada jau nebebūna read-only, you can just do whatever, you check them in, submit, ir tada, yeah, basically, kad nebūtų jokių unwanted changes. This is, kaip atrodo P4V šito visual client, basically langas. You got all the options viršui just for submitting, checking out, deleting files if you want. Basically, tiesiog parodyt, kaip atrodo, kad neišsigąstumėt what happens. You can also have like different windows. There's like a history of changes. There's an administrator mode, kurį gali įsijungt, which, funny story, buvo man vienas, like dar dabar, man rodos, pas mane kompe yra basically some sort of command, neaišku, kurioje vietoje jinai užstrigo, bet aš jau perinstaliavau per Force'ą keletą kartų, aš deepau savo ten, nunukinau basically viską, ištryniau, ką tik buvo galima pradėti nuo naujo, ir every time I do anything, jis man rodo basically errorą, kai jis negali daryti vienos komandos, like just whenever aš jį pasileidžiu, there's something that just keeps updating, ir jis man sako, kad jis negali tą padaryti, ten su vienu keisu kažkokiu, I can't access these files, you know, access denied, or something, but you're not supposed to be doing anything, why you keep spamming me with this? Yeah, it's just, like, I still haven't figured out kodėl taip daro, but, you know, hopefully jums taip nenutiks. Bet yeah, yra optionai, basically, kuris saugo šitos failus, tarkim, the depot, jis yra tiesiog ten, kur serverį įrašėt, jis ten ir bus, tik tai šiuo atveju pas mane jis yra the diske įrašytas, which means kad there's an error right now, tarkim, su per Force'o ateina ir šitas merge toolas, P4 merge, kurį tiesiog galima įsirašyti, which, basically, kuris, jeigu yra failas to pačiu pavadinimu, you can just compare it ir žiūrėti, kurį pasirinkt. Tik tai dabar jis, jeigu not on the same, like, not on C, kur šitą Windows'ą įrašyti, tai jis nematys, tada junais į external tools ir jis tau rašys, I don't know, nerandu, žinai, šito jokio differentiation tool, tipo, like, it's, like, I don't know where it is, tai čia tiesiog bugas dabar yra, bet in the future, just basically, kur įrašysi, just sort of P4 merges turėtų veikti. But yeah, just depot, like, galima nustatyti šitą different saugojimo vietą, if you like, just basically pasižiūrėkit, kur it's definitely somewhere there. Yeah, so there's some problem, there we go, like, the host or server, this sounds similar, but make sure that šitą server is the place where you type in the IP and stuff, and not anywhere else. Ir jo, ir just like all these log levels, kuriuos galit matyti, basically, kad nespamintų jums, arba jeigu kaip tik norit pamatyti everything that's going on. Jeigu jūs pasileidžiat šitą Perforce P4V client ir jums neleidžia prisconnecting for whatever reason, there is a chance kad just basically for some reason arba susigličino, arba buvo išjungtas Perforce service, tiesiog just go restart it. There's also some other error that I don't remember right now, but basically most of the time tiesiog it should just help restarting this stuff. Turn it off and on again. It's as simple as that. Yeah. So, jeigu dar kažkas, unsure, like, some error, kažkas naujo, there's definitely going to be errors, kurių, like, čia neaprašyta ten. Vien Aurimas Augutis jau buvo man sort of a bit of a strange thing, buvo tiesiog neleido jam prisiconnecting or submitting file for no reason, kažkoks erroras, like, nobody knows, At some point, so Google is your friend. Ir jeigu ką, there's also Rob Jessup, kuris at this point, he's working with Perforce and other things. They got it ping in jį. That would be a great idea because, he would probably be able to help you. There's a link to the Perforce page, which also has a lot of like information, but, just basic skeleton of like how to install and stuff. Jeigu jūs nenorit šitų skaidrų žiūrėti, this is just reachable there. And that's about it for Perforce. I don't know, like, it's not that hard to be honest. It's just a version control. Tiesiog reikia žinoti, kas kur yra ir that's about it. Other than that, tiesiog gaunas jūsų pačių jau išsiaiškinti, kokią problemą ir koks keisas ir ką reikia padaryti, kokie reikalavimai, and basically that's it. Any questions?
Kokių turėjai buvusių Perforce?
Basically, bet kaip sakiau, buvo ten tas, kur failai, like basically dėl to, kad Unity, kai upgrade'inos iš vienos versijos į kitą, tada Perforce'as losindavo, žodžiu, upgrade'ini Unity projektą į kitą versiją, nors Perforce'as yra jungtas ir ten failai read-only, bet he doesn't care, jis ten ištrina, užrašo ant viršaus, ir Perforce thinks visi šitie failai nauji, kurie like checkoutinti, net like submitinti, they're like untouched, but in reality they're not read-only, tipo, I don't know, shit could happen if Perforce wouldn't know about it, tai čia buvo very big no-no. Kažkas buvo su log levels, kur tiesiog basically uždedi vieną, jis tau vis tiek rašo everything. It's like, it's just broken, just doesn't work. Ir jo, I don't remember exactly once, bet pavyzdžiui, Aurimas, kaip sakiau, irgi bandė prisiconnectint, jam submitino šitą, like once you submit a file, it just pops up an error, atrodo kaip viskas normaliai turbūt, but it's not. Just like that. Ir dar buvo vienas, kur root directory, kur workspace'as, jeigu yra aukščiau negu tavo projektas ir tu dar basically iš kito folderio ėmė negu tavo Unity šitas projektas, which is technically possible ir turėtų veikt, bet mėtė errorus, kad the file is sort of unreachable or something, žodžiu, irgi buvo toks.
Tai errorai konsolėje?
Jo, konsolėje viskas, there's things, ką galima pamatyti ir pasiklausinėti basically aplinkui ir either Google it, pasižiūrėti for duplicates, arba Jessup parašyti. Arba man, tipo, I don't know, maybe I will have heard of it or something.
Jeigu tie failai read-only yra, tu juos gali mėginti nesėkmingai editint ir nepaeditint?
Yeah, I think Unity pops up with kažkokio šito, arba jeigu bandai ant mano develop įsijungti, there was definitely kažkoks dialogue, kur tipo, are you sure you want to do this? Tipo, like, nes they're read-only and...
Nes aš turėjau keisą, kur atsiuntė projektą ir tipo jiem šviesa kiaurai objektų švietė. Ir tipo, atsiuntė didelį projektą, ten errorai buvo dėl Perforce'o, išjungiau Perforce'ą, nuėmiau nuo shaderio read-only, atsidariau shaderį, užseivinau nieko nekeitęs, and it worked. Parašiau jam, ką padariau, tipo, thanks.
Yeah, I mean, that could be just shader magic, I don't fucking know, but definitely Perforce'as sometimes. Also, Perforce'as šiaip jeigu bandysit kolabą jungt, like, yeah, one or the other, tipo kolabas išjungt Perforce'ą, but like, I mean, technically should at least.
Most of the time, ta prasme, tu tau tiesiog užfreezins, arba editorių žiauriai lagint pradės.
Jo, tai vat, man rodos, Aurimas ir turėjo tą sort of bugą, kur tiesiog just it's supposed to work, but because we used Colab or Perforce vienu metu, it's just you stick to one version control system, guys. It's just gonna be easier. Tai va, jeigu daugiau klausimų, Mr.
Third question.
Yes, let's go.
Pirmas, why not just like Git? Ir antras question, what the frick are these pictures?
Okay, pirmas klausimas. It's based on preference, I don't know. Nu, tipo, kiekvienam žmogui, I'm not sure about the exact differences, kas kam patogiau, but I don't know, they do have tam tikrus pliusus ir minusus kiekviena sistema, so whatever, kas patogiau, maybe just Perforce has like safer šito.
More secure, nes
More secure.
hostini serverį savo kompuose, savo tinkle, o Gitas tu kažkur uploadini, tipo.
I think it's a matter of preference, tipo, nu, sakau, kaip turi pliusus minus. O pictures, I don't know. What's the matter? Do you dislike them? They're very great, man. So, about Perforce though, anybody dar klausimų? Because then we can move on to Facebook, something really exciting and woo! It's great.
Spoiler alert, it doesn't work.
Well, Dumbledore dies at page 499. What?
MySpace integracija turės.
I hope not. Jeigu ką, tai OneLT planavo padaryti integraciją, bet tada OneLT bombino ir nebebuvo prasmės.
Rimtai?
No. Okay. Yeah, well, I mean, just, atėjo bent jau.
He will see the video.
Yeah, he will see the video. He's gonna have a great time. Basically, aš turėjau linksmą dieną vieną tiesiog pamatęs, nu, žiūriu, hey, this Facebook cases, looks interesting, atsibodo kiti dalykai, I'm just gonna kill myself. Ir tada paspaudžiu ant Facebook ir assign to myself, tai that's what happened. Visą dieną, basically visą dieną, tada ir sėdėjau prie to case, trying to figure out what the hell's going on, kodėl šitas neveikia, rašinėjau devui, but, sometimes he was just busy. Šiaip atrašinėjo, but that day specifically, it was just, I don't know what's going on. Maybe I'm just doing something wrong. There's definitely, yra daug vietų, kur galima pasižiūrėti info, and I was like, maybe I'm just retarded, maybe aš tiesiog nesuprantu šitų dalykų. But eventually I sort of understood kur kas turi eiti ir dar padėjo devas, and basically that's why I'm here. That's why I suffer so you guys don't have to. I'm basically suffering for your Facebook sins. Tai va. Basically, the Facebook platform yra skirta tiesiog either for the Facebook game room, kas yra like jų atskira programėlė, like to launch apps and stuff, like games and other stuff. Arba WebGL, basically ant jų šito page'o, like on the browser. Taigi, it's really easy, kadangi dabar nuo 5.6 versijos, it's sort of irgi in-house, tai mes tiesiog, you just go pasirenki supportą while installing Unity, and that's basically it. Also, you need to have WebGL support arba Windows build, jeigu esi ant Mac and you want to build for Windows. Because otherwise, tiesiog neišeis building. It's just how it is. Nes Facebook'o tik tai platforma, it just needs those modules. Kaip nueiti, it's really easy. Facebook developers page yra toks atskiras dalykas. You can just prisijungti su savo Facebook šito accountu. Ir at that point, it's all just in apps. Basically, tiesiog naują appą sukuri. Ir if you need to have the page, the dashboard, and all the information is going to be there. That's the first thing you got to do, basically. What's that? Nelabai svarbu, koks yra pavadinimas šito appo, what you're just gonna basically tiesiog pačiam atsimint, contact email irgi didn't really matter. Tiesiog you just create it, basically that's very simple. Tada, there's a very interesting thing, kas nutiko basically, kodėl aš ten kokias 3 ar 4 valandas krušausi su tuo. Ir paskiau devas tiesiog su juo reikėjo išsiaiškinti dėl to, kad jeigu tu nenustatai šito category as a game, because it's just a tiny, small, in the main settings, tokia small little langelis, kur reikia paspausti kažką, and you're like, hey, whatever, it's, aš žinau, kur eiti yra, rodo šitie tutorialai, kad go here, push this, and go select these things, ir tu nueini, I go here, I push this, select these things, select what things, they're not here. Basically, jeigu nenustatai kategorijos as a game, ir paskui dar subcategory gal, bet nebūtinai jau tada man rodos. Some of the modules, kurios, tarkim, like web hosting ir Facebook Game Room modules for the app, they're just not going to be there. Ir kaip aš išsiaiškinu galiausiai, tiesiog devas man rašo, tiesiog numeta screen capą su raudonom, tipo, these things, tipo, click here, ir aš toks matau, kad it's, like, I'd be retarded, jeigu nematyčiau šitų, ir aš toks žiūriu, jam nusinčiu savo, ir sakau, rodo, where? You saw it for a minute, tipo, typing thing. Well, I'll get back to you. Tai basically jis pasižiūrėjo ir vat pasakė, oh, you gotta choose a category. Aš toks, why is it not? Look, nebuvo parašyta. I checked twice, like no information anywhere. Tai this is very important, like just don't make the mistake, jeigu paskiau, nes web hosting, I don't know kaip jie dabar darys, they are planning to make changes ties trečia versija 17 about some sort of packaging ir uploading gal kitaip veiks, but basically for most of the time, kiek buvo web hosting reikės, and you just basically, you can't do it without it. You just need it, ir nebuvo, if you don't choose a category. So yeah, tada you just basically add platform. There's a simple one, Facebook Web Games. You need to enable WebGL or simple application hosting, just because, I mean, it's WebGL, and jeigu jūs bandysit uploadint programą be šito simple application hosting, you just parašys, you need simple application hosting. So just do that right away ir bus lengviau. So these are the things kurių nebuvo, kai man reikėjo, like, it's not the exact picture, but you can just imagine, kad taip pat atrodė, kai man Yuri atsiuntė šitos. Not the same Yuri, by the way, the other one. Jis atsiuntė, like, how are you not able to see these? Like, how are you not, you know, just click here. But basically, tada jau turėtumėt matyti what web hosting ir Game Room native. Tai, honestly, web hosting is more important. Game Roomas, maybe nebūtinai, sometimes it doesn't actually matter. Yeah, once you're like in the web hosting page, just choose Unity WebGL. That's basically it. I'm not sure what's the HTML5 bundle for, but gali būt for some other stuff, kurių mums nelabai reikia. Most of the time, just like Unity WebGL is quite fine. So once you upload, like, kai jūs bildinat Facebook or platformai, there's a little checkbox which says package build for uploading. And it will basically tiesiog supackagins visą šitą WebGL ir that's the thing you upload here. Atsiras pas jumis šitokiam little thingy, kur uploadas ir jo statusas. Basically, once, like, eventually you're going to have a bunch of these, like, buildus su uploadinta. The one that's pushed to production basically bus loadinamas ten, kur bus jūsų linkas. There was like a app link. I think paskiau bus dar. Parodysiu, kur tą gaut, but basically you can just either delete it, download it, wherever you guys see. You can read it, simple stuff. But pushing to production means kad tas buildas will be the one that's loaded, kai žmogus nueina jūsų linką. Yeah, in the player settings, dabar grįžtam iki Unity atgal. Facebook player settings yra Facebook SDK version, app ID and upload access token. Tai app ID basically simple, ten buvo dashboard'e galima, Daisy, well, just app ID, just grab it here. It's really simple, not something hard to find. Web hosting or šitam page, you can just get asset, upload access token, ir put it in here. Ką jums tai leis padaryti, kad kai jūs buildinsit šitam, when you go to the build settings for Facebook, there we go. You can just package build for uploading, but once you have, like, kai jau padarai buildą, you can upload the last build to Facebook automatically. Nu, kad nereikėtų ten just go manually ieškot file. You can just press a button. If you have the upload access token normaliai įdėta, it's just going to upload it. Everything's going to be fine. Of course, it could be an error. Whatever happens, like bugai visą laiką nutinka. I think there was one bug, kad kai tas neveikia, but at this point, kuo toliau Facebook kažką darau, to man, like, how is this even working in the first place? but shape, yeah, like, it used to work normally. At some point, tai tiesiog paspaudai, just uploads ir iš karto you can just go there į tą page'ą prieš tai, kur matėm, ir just push to production if you want. Yeah, taigi, a little bit of a warning right now. Tai, with the newest, there's like a little tooltip that comes up, kai tu tik tai ateini Facebook platformą, įsirašai, you're like, I'm going to do cases, this is going to be great. Ir tu pamatai, hey, a tooltip, a new version is 7.10.1 SDK. You might want to use that, yeah, in your player settings. So let me tell you right now, don't. Just don't. Because it's broken. Very. Right now it's like, maybe you'll be able to build, maybe not. Who knows? It's very unreliable. The developer knows about this. I've just given him multiple reports, and it's a bad site. But he's working on it. At some point it's gonna get fixed. He's already doing PRs and stuff. So it's getting there. But for now, just stick to 7.9.4. It should work fine. Also, did I write it here or later? Basically, there's also a page where you can have it. Oops, whatever. No. Let's stay here. Basically, there's a page in Facebook developers for Unity SDK. You can download the SDK 7.10.0 from their page, which is even more broken. If you ever try to get that into your project, you're going to see that the Facebook player settings are just entirely destroyed. Actually, all the player settings, just none of the tabs work anymore. Basically, you just ruin your project. Also, if you accidentally go to 7.10.1 and you're just man, I can't build anymore. All this stuff is just bad now. You have to actually delete libraries and set it back to 7.9.4, delete the libraries and project settings, and only then you're going to be able to work. It's very, very nasty. But
So is there a version that is working correctly?
Yeah, 7.9.4 should work properly. This is the one that's basically when you start up Unity with the Facebook platform, that's the one you start on, 7.9.4, and that sort of works normal, it's proper, least amount of bugs, I guess. But yeah. So this now for the game room, the little app that they use. It's really not complicated. It's just some sort of platform they use to launch their apps and stuff. And what we want is the two options at the bottom here, where we can use the developer options like local game builds and Unity games. If you have the game room installed and you build and run for the Facebook platform, it should technically launch it on the Facebook game room app, but it also should do a lot of things like not crash and not break. So 50% of the time works every time. But if it doesn't and you really need to just work it out, you can just click debug local Unity game build and then just select that packaged or just the exe. I think it's the executable. It's fine. Yeah, and it will just launch on its own. Maybe there's a specific bug that you have to test it out on. So just keep in mind that you can also, if you build for the game room, it's basically just a Windows build, but just extra stuff from here might just break something. As it is right now, once you upload the WebGL build to your web host in the app page, whatever, in Facebook, it's not really going to work. I don't even know if it's for 7.9.4, 7.10, something. It was something to do with how it packages the whole project, the build, and you can still open it with certain programs, but whatever Facebook is doing on their side is not opening that properly. So also the developer knows about this and he's working on it, but as you can see, all of these things start piling up and he's working on this and working on that, and he's been working a lot, I guess. So yeah, there's some errors that you guys might see if you go for the 7.10 version, and basically, as I said, you just gotta basically restart the whole thing, just go back to 7.9.4, delete libraries and project settings, because otherwise I'm not sure, it does get corrupted at some point. I don't know if you might still be able to build, I don't know, but for safety reasons, just nuke it. Either go new project or whatever, but you can still save if you really need to, by just doing what I said. Yeah, also this Facebook SDK for Unity, as I said in the page, it's really bad. Don't click that big green button. You're not gonna have a good time. But in general, the SDK is a useful thing because it gives if you're a developer that wants to do games for Facebook, it has all of the functionality like logging in, sending pings for some request tokens or whatever. is all of the stuff that you would find on Facebook, like just made easier. So the SDK is actually really useful, but you can go to the changelog and then just basically you'll find the 794 version, download that, should work proper. Like you shouldn't have a lot of problems with that. So fact of the matter is like 7.9, click that button. It's a lot better. And yeah, so Yuri Zakipny is the guy I was talking about, the developer. He works on other stuff as well, but at Yuri, he'll take you to him, and he usually he's a really cool guy. He's fun to talk to. He's not, angry about it whenever you just talk to him. He's whatever, just trying to figure out why his platform doesn't work. And
You joke?
yeah, he's not that kind of guy. You can always write to him with questions if you have like, why is this not working, or how do I do this? Like sometimes you just don't know. Like I said, you just don't know why you can't figure this out. So you just write to him. He'll give you something to work on. And for the Facebook platform, there's not actually a page on Confluence. So there's only like developer pages on Facebook, and some information definitely is there, but no Confluence page. And I just put on some links in here. So any questions about the Facebook platform?
Tai Yuri vienas tai dirba su Facebook?
Like, nežinau. Jis basically, like, he's my go-to guy. Aš jam rašau, jeigu kažkas negerai, jam rašau, I think he's like the main guy. Gali būt, kad daugiau žmonių, bet tai reikėtų jau pasižiūrėti Confluence area tiesiog šitą page, jeigu ten kažkas dar irgi dirba. Tai va.
Tai, susirašai instaleryje supportą to Facebook Game Room'o ir vis tiek dar SDK reikia atsisiųsti?
Ne, jeigu vat, su Unity šituo supportu parsisiunti, tai tada nereikia. Jo, also, I think, esmė, kad šitas supportas, kurį atsisiunti, is just kaip buildams daryti and stuff. Like, it also has some player settings, but šitie, the actual SDK bent jau šitą Unity package, kurį gauni iš UPage'o, for like there, tai tada tas ir prideda all that functionality. I think you still have to go there ir per changelogą šitą susiras 794, jeigu nori developing properly for that. Bet dažniausiai, jeigu bus koks nors repro projektas, tai jie bus tą parsisiunti. Just gotta check. First thing, jeigu tik tai gaunat kokį nors šitą case'ą, just open it up, pasižiūrėkit, ar tai nėra 7.10, 7.10.1 versija, tipo. Because that's the first thing that could happen. It's just broken. Tada jau nežinau, tada jau just basically any case. Šitą tiksliai dabar nežinau, bet turėtų būti Facebook, there should be a file player settings, nes jis like basically hijackina player settings per savo failiuką, ir you should find a little file called player settings, like something Facebook player settings, ir ten turėtų būti parašyta SDK versija. So just basically look for it in the assets kažkur, in the folders.
Aš turiu dar pastebėjimą. Turėjau bugą, kad jeigu instaliuoji Facebook tą SDK iš puslapio ir jeigu yra Game Room, tas instaliuotas packages iš Unity, tada everything is just...
Jo, tai vat...
Tai neturėtų tada...
Just either... It's what jeigu tu dar ten tą with big green buttons siunteis, tai tiesiog jis tiesiog nesvarbu kas, just breaks everything. I guess... No, I think aš ant tuščio Unity tą įrašinėjau, just sort of... Įsijungi player settings, ten nieko nerodot, like bandai maigyti per langelius, nothing. It's just gone, destroyed. So don't do big green buttons, guys. That said, download. It's dangerous. Yeah. Yes. Well, sadly, there's only one, and that's the only one that's broken. So, yeah, I don't know. If there's no more questions, I guess. Thanks for listening, everybody. Hope you guys learned something nice. And then you don't have to suffer like I did through all of whatever that was.